There's a specific sound that happens when your keycard gets denied at a place you've worked for 8 years. It's not just a beep, it's a death knell. The red light flashed twice at the security turnstile of Apex Defense Solutions, and I knew my world had just shifted. I'm Andrew Richardson, 47 years old, and I'd been building cybersecurity systems since before these kids knew what an encryption protocol was. The new guard, couldn't have been older than 25, looked up from his tablet with that apologetic expression they teach in customer service training. "Sir, your badge isn't working. You'll need to sign in at the visitor kiosk." Visitor kiosk. 8 years at Apex, 21 years in civilian cybersecurity, 8 years before that in the Navy, and now I'm a visitor in my own building. I looked at the plastic card in my hand. This thing had gotten me into rooms that don't officially exist. Meetings where we discuss keeping Chinese hackers out of the Pentagon servers. Now it was just a piece of junk. "It's Andrew Richardson," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm the lead architect for the Guardian Protocol. Check the manual override list." The kid tapped his screen, frowning. "Sorry, Mr. Richardson. The system shows you as... let me see. External contractor, pending status review." Pending status review. Those words hit me like ice water. I'd been at Apex since before this building was finished, before half the current staff was hired. I designed the network architecture that this kid's computer was running on right now. Fine. I walked over to the iPad on the stand and typed in my information. Name, Andrew Richardson. Person visiting, Madison Hayes. The machine spat out a flimsy paper badge that I stuck to my shirt like a scarlet letter. As I waited for the elevator, my mind ran diagnostics. What had changed? The Guardian project was 90% complete. We were weeks away from final naval research review. The only variable that had shifted was management. Old VP retired to Florida last month, and in came Madison Hayes with her Stanford MBA and 8 years of McKinsey consulting. Madison, who thought our cybersecurity protocols were legacy systems that needed digital transformation. The elevator dinged. I stepped in with a bunch of junior analysts scrolling their phones. They had no idea the security running their devices was based on algorithms I wrote in 2016 when I was still getting my feet wet in civilian defense contracting. 40th floor. Usually this place hummed with focused energy. Today felt different, performative somehow. People walking faster, talking louder, carrying stacks of papers that probably said nothing important. I headed straight to my office, the corner one with the view of the Potomac River. The door was open. Inside, 2 facilities guys were wheeling in a whiteboard on casters. My desk, the oak one where I'd mapped out the security architecture for half the East Coast's critical infrastructure, was gone. In its place sat 4 ergonomic chairs, around a glass table. "Excuse me," I said. The guys looked guilty, like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. "Where's my equipment, the secure terminals that were in here?" "Ms. Hayes had everything moved," one of them said, wiping sweat off his forehead. "Said she was repurposing the space for collaborative ideation. Your stuff's in the annex, cube 14B, the annex. That's contractor purgatory, the overflow area near the bathrooms where they put summer interns and people they're about to fire." I felt something cold settle in my stomach, not anger. Anger makes you sloppy. This was recognition. Madison wasn't just reorganizing, she was erasing me. I walked to the annex. Gray cubicles, fluorescent lights, the smell of instant coffee and desperation. There, crammed into a space meant for someone half my size, was a cardboard box with my personal effects. My framed photo of my daughter Jessica in her high school graduation cap. A stress ball from a cybersecurity conference. My commendation letter from Admiral Sullivan from my Navy days. My secure terminal, the one with direct encrypted lines to naval research servers, was sitting unplugged on the floor like a piece of junk. I sat in the cheap rolling chair. It squeaked. Most people would have stormed into Madison's office right then, started yelling about lawyers and wrongful termination. But 8 years in the Navy taught me something. When someone declares war on you, you don't announce your battle plan. You execute it. I pulled out my personal laptop, air-gapped, encrypted with keys that exist only in my head, and opened a new file. Log 001 XT. Madison wanted to play corporate politics. She was about to learn that the most dangerous people aren't the ones making noise in conference rooms. They're the ones you don't notice until your entire system crashes. I checked my email on my phone since my terminal was dead. There it was. Message from Madison sent at 7:30 this morning. Subject, streamlining operations. Andrew, per our new operational directive, we're consolidating the technical interface. Please route all project communications through my office for approval. We need unified messaging for our stakeholders. Thanks for being flexible. Madison, unified messaging. Corporate speak for your voice doesn't matter anymore. I didn't reply. Just took a screenshot and saved it to my encrypted partition. Then I opened my calendar. Strategic planning meeting at 10 a.m. I wasn't on the invite list. I checked my watch. 8:15. I had an hour and 45 minutes to prepare, but I wasn't going to crash the meeting like some desperate middle manager. I was going to be the ghost in the machine. The annex had one advantage: thin partition walls and ductwork that carried sound perfectly from the executive conference room. I could hear every word of Madison's presentation without being in the room. At 9:55, Madison walked past in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She was talking to her assistant, a nervous young woman named Nicole. "Did you update the slide headers?" Madison asked, her voice carrying that particular authority of someone who's never been questioned. "Yes, Ms. Hayes, I replaced all the A. Richardson metadata with the Apex corporate logo, just like you asked." My jaw tightened. She was scrubbing my name from 8 years of work. Not just taking credit, erasing the audit trail. In defense contracting, that's not just unethical, it's dangerous. When something goes wrong with military cybersecurity, and something always goes wrong, investigators trace everything back to the original architect. If my name wasn't on the code I wrote, and her name was, she'd own every bug, every vulnerability, every potential catastrophe. "And the encryption protocol summary?" Madison continued. "All that technical jargon? I simplified it into bullet points, made it more executive-friendly. Executive-friendly. She'd taken cryptographic proofs that keep Chinese hackers out of our defense networks and turned them into PowerPoint slides. I waited until they entered the conference room, then opened our internal system on my phone. My access was restricted but not gone. I watched in real time as the file Guardian Protocol v4.2 Final was modified. The last edited by tag switched from A. Richardson to M. Hayes. That's when I made my decision. I needed to see this presentation firsthand. I walked past the conference room. The walls were glass but recently frosted, another transparency measure that actually blocked the view. The door was slightly open. "The key to the Guardian system," Madison was saying, her voice projecting confidence, "is the synergistic overlay of machine learning heuristics with blockchain-enabled security matrices." I almost laughed out loud. Synergistic overlay. I'd built a real-time threat detection engine that could identify and neutralize intrusion attempts in microseconds. She made it sound like a crypto startup pitch. "Madison," a voice interrupted. "Dr. Nicholas Porter, our lead systems engineer. Good man, brilliant, but timid. The heuristic engine isn't an overlay. It's the core architecture. If we document it as an overlay, naval research will flag it as a vulnerability." There was a pause. I could picture Madison's smile freezing in place. "Nick, I appreciate the technical perspective, really. But we're speaking to admirals, not programmers. They want to know it works, not how it works. Let's focus on outcomes, not technical weeds." Technical weeds. She was calling the foundational security protocols of a $1.4 billion defense system weeds. I walked back to my cubicle. My phone buzzed. Email from legal. "Mr. Richardson, per request from VP Digital Transformation, we're reviewing the necessity of external consulting for project maintenance. Please surrender physical access credentials to security by EOD Friday. Digital access will transition to read-only immediately." Friday was 3 days away. The final naval research presentation was next Tuesday. Madison was timing this perfectly. She wanted me gone, physically and digitally, before Admiral Sullivan arrived. She wanted to be the only face in the room. Instead of replying, I opened my laptop again. Years ago, working Navy logistics, I learned a vital lesson. Never build a house you can't lock from the outside. The Guardian Protocol was my house. Madison had keys to the front door, but she didn't know about the maintenance access I'd built into the core architecture. I activated a latent logging feature buried deep in the compiler. Every keystroke, every file modification, every version change Madison or her team made would now be mirrored to a secure server I controlled. If she wanted to own my code, she was going to own every mistake she made with it. Around noon, Madison emerged from the conference room, riding high on her own BS. She spotted me in the annex and walked over, leaning against my cubicle partition. "Andrew," she said with that shark smile consultant's perfect. "Great session in there. Really moved the needle forward." "I heard," I said, not looking up from my screen. "Synergistic overlays." She missed the sarcasm entirely. "Exactly. Look, I know this transition is abrupt, but we need to optimize our human capital allocation. With the project entering maintenance phase, your heavy lifting is done. We can handle the day-to-day operations." The project wasn't in maintenance. It was in pre-deployment validation. If she changed the security headers without understanding the checksums, the naval research servers would reject the entire update package. "You'll want to preserve the original metadata," I said, finally looking at her. "The authentication protocols depend on verified authorship," she waved dismissively. "We'll address any technical hiccups in post-production. That's just implementation details." Implementation details. In cybersecurity, there are no small details. Every line of code matters. Every authentication sequence matters. Miss one checksum, and you can lock yourself out of your own system. "I need you to transfer all your working files to Nicole," Madison continued. "We're consolidating the archives. And legal mentioned your access termination. Friday, right?" "Friday," I confirmed. "Perfect. Clean handoff, no loose threads." She tapped my cubicle wall and walked away, probably already mentally spending her promotion bonus. She thought she'd just fired a subordinate. She didn't realize she'd dismissed the only person who knew how to fly the plane she was piloting. There's a diner about 10 minutes south of Apex called Murphy's. It hasn't been updated since the Cold War, serves coffee that tastes like battery acid, and is the unofficial meeting spot for mid-level Pentagon brass who want to talk without a paper trail. I arrived at 6 p.m. The place was nearly empty except for a trucker eating meatloaf and, in the back booth, Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Torres. Becky wasn't in uniform, gray hoodie and jeans, looking like any other tired government worker. But her posture gave her away. Back straight, eyes scanning entrances every few seconds. "You look like hell, Andy," she said as I slid into the booth opposite her. "You look like you're dressed for a funeral," I countered. "Maybe I am. My secure comms have been buzzing all day. Update flags on Guardian that don't match our deployment schedule. The authorship metadata is scrambled." The waitress came over. "Coffee, black," I said. "Keep it coming." After she left, I leaned forward. "Madison Hayes is rewriting history, Becky." She scrubbed my name from the core modules and put herself as lead architect. Becky swore quietly, rubbing her face. "I knew it. Told Admiral Sullivan that Apex was getting shaky. Who is this woman? Stanford MBA, McKinsey background, track record in digital transformation. Thinks cybersecurity is just another business process to optimize. And she's taking over before the final review?" Becky looked ready to punch something. "Sullivan won't sign off if the original architect isn't there to vouch for the system. Madison thinks she can vouch for it. She's got the board convinced she's some kind of innovation genius." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small, ruggedized external drive. Black, heavy, unassuming. "What's this?" Becky asked. "Insurance," I said, sliding it across the table. "Source code as of this morning, digitally signed with my private key. Also contains logs of every change Madison has made, every safety protocol she's bypassed, every email where she calls my security measures legacy thinking." Becky covered the drive with her hand. "You want me to hold this? I want you to keep it offline until Tuesday. When Madison's presentation crashes and burns, Admiral Sullivan is going to want answers. This drive contains all of them. You sound awfully confident it'll crash." I looked out the window at the parking lot. A single streetlight was flickering. "Madison thinks Guardian is a product. She doesn't understand it's a living system. She doesn't know that I built a dependency into the core logic, a manual verification handshake required from the lead architect every 45 days. "Security lockout," Becky whispered. "That verification is due Tuesday at 2 p.m., right in the middle of her presentation to Admiral Sullivan." Becky laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You're ruthless, Andy. I'm quality control," I corrected, picking up the check. Madison wanted unified messaging. She's about to get it. The next morning, I made the obligatory trip to HR. In corporate America, HR isn't neutral arbitration. It's the company's immune system, designed to identify and eliminate threats. Right now, I was the virus. I sat across from Timothy Stevens, mid-30s with a smile that looked focus grouped. His office was full of motivational posters. Teamwork makes the dream work. Innovate or stagnate. So, Andrew, Tim said, scanning the formal complaint I'd just handed him, you're alleging intellectual property, theft, and hostile work environment. I'm documenting it, I said. Madison Hayes removed my name from federal defense software copyright headers. That violates federal acquisition regulations. She's also instructed staff to bypass mandatory security protocols. Tim sighed like he was dealing with a toddler. Andrew, look, Madison is very dynamic. Her leadership style is transformational. Sometimes change feels uncomfortable, but we have to embrace the bigger picture. She's building a cohesive brand narrative. Brand narrative? My voice dropped an octave. We're building cybersecurity systems for the Navy, not selling yoga mats. If the narrative is wrong, people die. See, this is the mindset I've been hearing about. Rigid thinking, not adaptable to our new culture. Tim tapped his pen on the desk. Your contract ends Friday anyway. Maybe it's best to just move forward. Take your severance, enjoy some time off. Why create unnecessary conflict? I stood up. I'm not creating conflict. I'm reporting a security breach. Tim didn't write anything down, didn't open a file, just smiled that plastic smile. I'll make note of your concerns, Andrew. But honestly, the executive team is very pleased with Madison's direction. I walked out. I'd done my duty, filed the paperwork. The system had failed to self-correct. Now I was free to implement manual override. Thursday afternoon, I waited until lunch. The office cleared out around 12:30. Madison always took 2-hour lunches with strategic partners, usually just networking at the country club. The bullpen was quiet. I opened my laptop and connected to the internal network. Madison, in her infinite wisdom, had streamlined admin permissions when she took over. She'd given herself super user access across all systems, but she hadn't bothered changing the default root password on the backup server cluster. Login, admin, password, admin123. I stared at the screen. 29 years of cybersecurity experience, millions of dollars in defense infrastructure, and the VP's password was admin123. It was insulting, but I was in. I navigated to the Guardian Core directory and found the presentation files Madison planned to demo Tuesday. I didn't delete anything. That would be sabotage. Instead, I found the 3 modules responsible for the graphical interface, all those pretty charts and real-time displays Madison loved showing off to executives. I applied a light encryption layer to them. Nothing heavy, just enough that the system would need to verify the user's credentials before rendering the graphics. Since the author was now listed as M. Hayes, the system would check her digital signature against the code's hash. Madison had never written a line of code in her life. The hashes wouldn't match. The system wouldn't crash. It would just refuse to display anything except raw error logs, specifically error 4003. Author verification failed. Contact system administrator. I set the encryption to activate on a timer, Tuesday, 1:59 p.m. 1 minute before showtime. While I was in the system, I found the email Madison had sent to the CFO that Tim had hinted about. Subject, Richardson situation. Don't worry about his complaints. He's old school Navy, doesn't understand agile methodologies. I'll have him out by Friday. Once he's gone, we can reallocate his $180K budget line to my innovation initiatives. Who needs a legacy architect for basic maintenance? Basic maintenance. She thought 29 years of my experience was basic maintenance. I saved the email. Then I did something petty. I admit it. I went into the digital cafeteria menu and changed Tuesday's lunch special from Taco Tuesday to Pink Slip Tuesday. Nobody would notice until it was too late. I closed the laptop. The trap was set. It wasn't a bomb. It was a mirror. All Madison had to do was stand in front of it, and Admiral Sullivan would see her for what she really was. Friday morning, my last official day. The atmosphere felt toxic. People avoided eye contact as I walked through the office. In corporate culture, failure is contagious. Stand too close to someone getting fired, you might catch a layoff. At 10 o'clock a.m., there was a mandatory all-hands video call to prep for the naval research presentation. The meeting invite had a tag I'd never seen before. Attendee, observer only, audio disabled. They'd preemptively muted me. I sat in my cubicle, put on headphones, and joined the call. Madison's face filled the center of my screen, broadcasting from her corner office. The rest of the team, Dr. Porter, Nicole, the junior developers, appeared in smaller boxes, looking exhausted. "Team," Madison began, voice booming with artificial enthusiasm. "This is our championship moment. Tuesday is going to define Apex defense solutions for the next decade. We're not just presenting a product, we're selling a vision of the future." She shared her screen. Slide 1, Guardian Protocol, Next Generation Defense, presented by Madison Hayes, VP Digital Transformation. My name was nowhere, not even in the acknowledgments footer. 8 years of work, erased. She clicked to slide 4, Technical Architecture. As you can see, Madison narrated, "We've streamlined the authentication pathways, removing redundant verification loops to increase response speed by 40%. I felt my blood pressure spike. Redundant verification loops? Those weren't redundancies. Those were the safety checks that prevented the system from mistaking a software update for a hostile intrusion. She'd gutted the core security features. I frantically typed in the chat, "Madison, you cannot remove verification loops. That violates fail-safe compliance protocols." The message appeared for half a second, then vanished. Deleted by moderator. Madison didn't even pause. "I see some activity in the chat. Let's keep the channel focused on constructive input. We don't want to get bogged down in negativity." She was gaslighting the entire engineering team in real time. I looked at Dr. Porter's video feed. He was pale, gripping his coffee mug. He knew what she'd done was dangerous, but he had a mortgage and 2 kids in college. He stayed silent. At 4:45 p.m., a security guard appeared at my cubicle. Not Rick, the usual guy who'd ask about my daughter's college plans. This was someone new, young, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Richardson," he said, holding a cardboard box. "Ms. Hayes asked me to escort you out. I need your badge and laptop." I stood up, buttoned my jacket, picked up the photo of Jessica. "It's okay," I told him. "You're just following orders." I handed him my badge, that piece of plastic that had been my identity for 8 years. I handed him my company laptop. The guard recited the script. "You're not permitted back on the premises without prior authorization." "Don't worry," I said. "I won't need a badge where I'm going." Tuesday morning broke gray and cold. Rain drummed against my windshield as I drove toward Apex. It felt like appropriate weather for demolition. I arrived at 1:30 p.m. The presentation was scheduled for 2 o'clock. The parking lot was full of black government sedans. Admiral Sullivan's entourage had arrived. I walked to the main entrance. The young guard saw me approaching and reached for his radio, panic in his eyes. "Mr. Richardson," he stammered, "I can't." Ms. Hayes specifically said. I stopped, looked him in the eye, reached into my jacket and pulled out a different badge, not an Apex corporate ID, but a Department of Defense contractor credential issued directly by Naval Research. It had a gold chip that granted access to any facility hosting classified military projects. "I'm not here as an Apex employee, son," I said calmly. "I'm here as a federal asset conducting a security audit. If you obstruct me, you're interfering with a Pentagon investigation. You want to explain that to the Marines outside?" The guard's face went white. He looked at the badge, then at the black sedans, then back at me. He lowered his radio. "Go ahead, sir." I took the elevator to the 40th floor. The hallway was empty, the entire floor cleared for VIPs. Fresh flowers lined the corridor leading to the boardroom. Lilies. They smelled like a funeral. I reached the heavy oak doors and heard voices inside. Laughter, the clink of china, casual conversation before the storm. I smoothed my dress blues, took a breath, and pushed the doors open. The room froze. Admiral Sullivan sat at the head of the oval table, looking like a granite monument in his dress uniform. Beside him was Becky, who gave me the slightest nod. On the other side sat the Apex executives, CEO, CFO, and Madison. Madison was standing near the projection screen, holding a laser pointer. When she saw me, her confident smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before rebuilding into a mask of annoyed condescension. "Andrew," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I wasn't expecting you today." She walked toward me, positioning herself to block my view of Admiral Sullivan. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "What the hell are you doing here? Security has explicit instructions." "I'm here for the presentation, Madison," I said calmly. "I'm the system architect." She laughed, sharp, incredulous. put a hand on my shoulder, patronizing and heavy. Andrew, I appreciate your past contributions. Really. But this is a strategic level discussion. We need the right people in the room. She turned to address Admiral Sullivan, smiling apologetically. Sorry about this, Admiral. Internal miscommunication. She turned back to me, eyes dead and cold. Contractors, wait outside, Andrew. There's a chair in the hallway. The room was silent. Nobody spoke. They were letting her erase me in front of the man I'd served under for 2 years. Is that your final decision, Ms. Hayes? I asked. It is. Please leave. I turned around, started walking toward the door, one step away from letting the building burn down behind me. Hold on. Admiral Sullivan's voice was gravel and thunder. I stopped, my hand hovering over the brass door handle. Sullivan stood up. The sound of his chair scraping back was like a gunshot in the silent room. Madison, he said, walking around the table. Did you just refer to Mr. Richardson as a contractor? Madison blinked, her smile wavering. Well, yes, Admiral. In our corporate structure... I don't give a damn about your corporate structure. Sullivan's voice cut through her explanation like a blade. Mr. Richardson wrote the encryption protocols that protect our submarine communications. If he walks out of this room, the Navy cancels this $1.4 billion contract. Are we clear? The CEO went pale. Admiral, we didn't realize... Obviously. Sullivan turned back to Madison. Now, Ms. Hayes, you were about to show us a live demonstration. Yes, sir, Madison said, her voice cracking. She scrambled to her laptop, hands shaking. The main screen flickered to life. I checked my watch. 1:59 p.m. Initializing Guardian Protocol, Madison announced. She hit enter. The screen went black. Then red text appeared. Critical error. 4003. Author verification failed. Contact System Administrator A. Richardson. The boardroom went dead silent. It's not a glitch, I said. It's a security feature. Since you removed my name from the authorization protocols, the system has identified you as a potential hostile actor. Madison stared at the screen. Fix it, she whispered. Andrew, please. I looked at Admiral Sullivan. He was smiling. Step away from the terminal, Sullivan ordered. I sat down, connected my laptop. Authorizing system override. Authentication key. Eagle 6, actual. The red screen vanished. The defense grid appeared, green lights pulsing. The simulation ran flawlessly. Guardian Protocol active, I reported. Sullivan nodded. Outstanding. He turned to the CEO. You have a leadership problem. Fix it. Madison walked out without looking at anyone. The next morning, the CEO called me personally. We'd like to offer you Chief Technology Officer, your budget, your team, your decisions, the salary. Figure made my eyes widen. $240,000. There's also the infrastructure expansion project, he continued. Admiral Sullivan specifically requested you as project lead. That afternoon, I moved back into my corner office. My secure terminals were reconnected and upgraded. Nicole stopped by around 3:00 p.m., grinning. Heard about your promotion, boss. Well deserved. An hour later, Admiral Sullivan called. I've got a new file for you. National Infrastructure Protection. Power, water, communications. Everything connected, everything vulnerable. A classified document appeared in my secure inbox. Project Fortress. National Infrastructure Resilience Network. Project Lead. A. Richardson. I opened the file. Legacy systems, incompatible protocols, bureaucratic red tape spanning 12 federal agencies. A cybersecurity engineer's nightmare. I smiled and cracked my knuckles. Jessica called that evening. Dad, I got into Virginia Tech's cybersecurity program. Full academic scholarship. That's incredible, Jess. I'm so proud. I want to follow in your footsteps, Dad. Build systems that protect people. After we hung up, I sat in my new office, looking out at the Potomac River. Madison had thought she could erase me, replace 29 years of experience with PowerPoint slides and buzzwords. She'd learned the hard way that in cybersecurity, competence isn't negotiable. I opened a new terminal window. Initialize Project Fortress XE. The cursor blinked, waiting for input. I was back where I belonged, in command of the code, building the future one secure protocol at a time. And nobody was taking my name off the system I built.